Hello, and welcome to the TD Podcast with your host, the Theatric Dyspraxic. It's been a little while since we put out a new episode of this program, mainly because I've had other stuff going on, different projects, and all that, but this is going to be a very special episode of the show. Well, every episode I like to consider special, as I enjoy speaking to the fine people that that have graciously agreed to come onto this program. But today is a bit of a personal one for me, as it actually coincides with the official release of my first book, The Words and Meanings Chained to the Floor, a collection of lyricisms by Brandon Haygood. I think that's the first time I've actually mentioned my full name on the program. But anyway, that's right. I am now officially a published author. And I couldn't be proud, couldn't be more proud of it, I should say. At least I would say that if I wasn't an insecure, modest shell. But we're not only here for that today. Sharing the stage with me this evening is the founder of Boxhead Books, the publishing company that has published my book, which I'm very grateful for. And I am happy to have on Mr. TL Oberheau. Longtime fans of the show, as if there are any, might not remember that I previously read some of his short stories on this program in the past, and the link for that will be in the description, of course. Today we're going to be talking about the origins of his company goal, and we're going to talk about some of his own writing himself, as well as delving a bit into my latest release, and we will also talk some about some of the other writers that he's published. So I would like to welcome the founder of Boxhead Books, TL Oberheau. TL, of course, standing for Too Long Didn't Read. Just kidding. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brandon. No, that was probably the best introduction I've ever heard in my life.
Oh,
Not even being sarcastic, that was incredible.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. I also love in the beginning, just the whole like the Freud. I guess you could call it a Freudian slip. The couldn't be proud. It really shows the mindset of a creative and how they view the whole your worst critic is the truest statement in possibly the universe.
Oh, that's especially true with me. I am the most scathing. Think of the most scathing critic you can think of, and that's pretty much how I am towards myself. I'm like, that's why I think I'm immune to like bad criticism, because even if somebody says, "Oh, this sucks. This is terrible," I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I can see that."
Well, you should see what the other guy says about it. Who's the other guy?
No, but welcome to the show. I'm happy to have you on.
Well, thank you again. It's nice to be back.
Yeah, we've had. Actually, I haven't had you on the show before, but I've read some of your stories before. Stories. I've read some of your stories before on the program, and I was very impressed with them actually. Again, when I do the readings, it's always like a cold reading. So going into, as I was reading it out loud, I was also reading it, and taking in the story and the characters and stuff for the first time. And I had a great time reading it, just like actually, reading it out loud, and I was kind of getting into the story and, reading the dialogue of the characters and stuff. It's a cathartic experience in a way to read other people's writing, kind of like see the story unfold as you are telling the story. That's always something that I enjoy.
Yeah, and that's why I love that you said you record things with the cold reading, because like actually as you are narrating what you're reading, it's the first time for you. It may very well be the first time for the listener and someone who didn't even read it for themselves. Like it's all these things going on. It's more like of a pure emotion, like oh, that's how I'm reading it. And then as you go on, you're like, oh, wait, maybe this isn't exactly how I saw it. But I don't know. I'm not trying to sound too pretentious here, but it's more real in my sense. It's more the
Yeah.
raw emotion is when you record it as it's like your first time as well.
Well, the spontaneity comes out. I mean, I know it's not really spontaneous, but it feels spontaneous because it's like I don't know what's going to happen next in the story. It's unfolding for me just as it is for anybody else. Um, and of course, the drawback of that is, when looking back, it's like, oh, I didn't know this was going on or this was the case. Otherwise, I would have read that in a different voice or in a different way. But either way, it's still once you go along in the story and you're just like, oh, what's gonna happen next? Like that, the characters kind of are feeling that too, because there's always an element of suspense in the stories that I read from you, and so the characters are going through a suspenseful situation. So for me, it's like, as somebody who considers themselves somewhat of an actor, it is it's very interesting to kind of go through that for the first time. It's very different from doing like theater or something, because you rehearse that and you have the same material, you always know what's going to happen next. But whenever you do like a cold reading, um, it's fun. It's just a whole lot of fun to do that. So I was happy to have that experience, and would love to do that again. Whether it was for your short stories, or another writer in your sort of arsenal, I guess. People that maybe you have published, which we'll talk a little bit about their work too. One of the things that I think I wanted to bring up is, obviously, you started doing this company fairly recently, and it is, independent. Um, so you probably haven't like spent a whole lot of time thinking about this kind of thing, and I don't really know how much about how that industry works. But have you ever thought about like audiobooks or audio releases of these types of books? Because if you ever did, that's always something that I've always wanted to get into. Was I've just always had uh this talent, I guess, or I just always enjoyed it and developed this skill of just, I was always good at reading things just out loud, like in class.
Mhm.
I was always called on to read, and that was always like the only moment where I shined in school, was whenever I
You
would.
are one of those kids that would like sigh and like mumble because I really like avoiding eye contact with the teacher, like, oh fuck, don't call on me, please.
Yeah, pretty much. If it was like, oh man, if it was to answer a math question, I was completely, hopeless. But when it came to
What
like,
about word problems that were math problems where you had to read the whole scenario out? They kind of like pull a fast one on you. They trick you.
um, yeah. Well, usually it wasn't. I didn't have to be called on for those, thankfully. But the funny thing was, with those types of math problems, I was more interested in the story of what was happening. Like, I don't care how many apples Juan had to take up the hill or whatever. Like, I just want to know what's the relationship between Juan and Gomez or whatever. Like, what
Yeah,
is?
actually, that would be an amazing hybrid class, like combining like algebra with like critical thinking and reading comprehension. Like John needs three apples, but also John's been having serious marriage problems, and if he gets the wrong apples, will that push him over the edge?
Yeah. What will happen? What will his wife do whenever she finds out? Yeah, that would be great. Um,
There's probably something there. There's something there that I think, I don't know, maybe like a one man play. I would consider it, Brandon. I'd consider it reviving your stage career. Maybe doing like something like that.
yeah, do like it's like a mathematical quandary, one man show. You just
Ugh.
bring random math throughout the whole the whole thing. That would be hilarious. I couldn't write that show because I don't have enough skills with math to be able to do it.
But maybe that's the hook. Maybe that's the underlying issue with
Yeah,
the stage play. We don't know.
it needs to be a,
Uh,
a collaboration, definitely, with
one day,
math
one
particular.
day.
One day.
But anyway, to answer your question about audiobooks, I actually have. I have looked into it. The thing about that is, see, like it is fascinating. Kind of what we were talking about, cold reading. Like, oh, it's a narrator's first time too. Like, Boxhead Books is a very new company. I learn new things all the time, and one of those things is that audiobooks are, well, one, they could be profitable if they're big enough, but there is like this like margin where unless you're kind of a big name, they're not, unless you can get it done pretty well. Like Amazon's ACX is like, you might see like 5 cents every few months unless you're like Stephen King level. And there's a bunch of other services that offer audiobooks and production, all these things that cost thousands of dollars. And that actually kind of relates to, in the long run, about how I formed the company. Uh, But anyway, we can get into that later. But think about that. If you get so many royalties per book, I mean, an audio book probably going to be less than $20. I can't imagine them being very expensive,
Hmm.
even from what I've seen so far. And then you spent like a couple $1,000s producing, and then you gotta pay the royalties for the narrator, and it's like you get like 10 cents every so often. But when for example, if you have someone like yourself as like a narrator and an author, I mean, there might be very well something there. Kind of like I don't know. I'm kind of just spitballing at the moment, um, but long and short of it is, yeah, audiobooks. I mean, typically not the easiest industry to get into, but I
Mm.
mean, there's always the possibility. There's always ways around things.
Well, it's like what you're doing with the company, kind of doing everything independent. I wonder if there is a possibility of doing like audiobooks like in an independent fashion. They may not be like the top tier like quality like you get if you recorded it in a professional recording studio, but like just like some people create their own like demos in music, and they can
Mm-hmm.
create pretty polished and good sounding music and audio just from whatever software they have or whatever microphone they have. So I don't know, that might be something to think about,
Oh,
to
I definitely think it is.
be
I
able
mean,
to
it seems
produce.
like, yeah.
Yeah, like like for instance, like for me, it's like I can record whatever just with my microphone. It's not always not the best quality, and I'm not the best mixer because I'm not good with the software and the technology and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. You record
Yeah.
something, you record an audiobook, and then you just like sell it for, $10 or however much, produce it cheap, make a little bit of profit. I don't know. That's always
I don't know, something to look into. Something to look into. I don't know.
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely not like, I mean, we've been in contact with each other for quite some time now. So I definitely think there'll be a future development, between us two. Uh,
Yeah, definitely. Because the thing is, I consider myself more of a performer than I am than a writer. I've written quite a bit, and I enjoy writing. Um, but there's, I meet people where it's like their thing is right, like yourself. It's like you're a bona fide writer. Like you actually can construct a story very well. And for me, I don't know. There's always an element of imposter syndrome with my writing, and I'm always like, uh, you know, try not to steal from somebody or try try not to nick this and come up with something. I don't like like with my lyricisms, my poems that I wrote for this upcoming release. Um, they're just little short form kind of stuff. A lot of it's autobiographical, some of it's not so much. Um, and that's always easier. And then there's the book that I'm writing, the sort of memoir that is obviously just based on my own experiences. So it's like I don't have to come up with any ideas for that because it's just kind of talking about your life and all that. I'm obviously there's the way that you go about it, but then but
Well, there's something to be said about that too, because when you look at your lyricisms and you look at the structure, and it's like how, like the different, like I mean, they're also too because they were based on music, so they follow certain like. I'm not a music guy at all, so you'll forgive me if I'm misusing the terms, but like the pentameter, like all these different things, you can almost feel the rhythm in them. And I think when you bring up the memoir you've been working on, which is actually how we met. I don't know if you remember.
mhm.
Um, there's an element to that too. It's not just like posting information on a page. You're not writing your own Wikipedia article. I mean, you do like a little bit of artsy, kind of creative aspects into it. But I mean, regardless of that, I mean, I definitely wouldn't shy. I definitely would shy away from the imposter syndrome. I mean, like a lot of those lyricisms. I mean, they're just like you could almost feel the song. I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, I know what I mean. You wrote the damn things, but it's like they they are very enjoyable. And I meant what I said when I told you all those times and those Instagram posts I've been blasting out. I mean, you really do feel a swirl of positive and negative emotions. And I don't think we should shy away from the negatives. I mean, I'm not saying we're making depressing pieces. I'm not saying they feel good. You just feel a lot of different things.
It's all over the place.
The one poem I told you about a while ago, I'm drawing a blank right now, but it was like, I think it was called like 12-year-old girl. And it's like the lyrics of this young girl kind of like thinking about her future, but also her present and how there's some dissonance and there's also a little bit of the past. And it's like, it's relatable to everybody, but there's also a level of individuality and personalness that you wonder about, because it's like, okay, like, who is this girl? Why does she feel this way? I kind of know what she's going through. I know other people that knows what she's going through. There's a lot of different mixes of experience in a single. I mean, I think that one specific poem, there's like 15 lines. If I'm just, it's a short one, but that's how I feel about all of them. You feel all these different things, and personal and collective, and I think that's the beauty in a lot of your lyricisms, Brandon.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very flattering. My intention, I think, when I was putting together the and you know, in my mind, in the beginning, it was kind of like, oh, I'll just slap together some of my songs and repackage them as poetry, and then done, I have a poetry book, you know. But I was very like deliberate in trying to choose a variety of different themes and different tones, so that it's not just all about one, you know, running theme. Um, because I didn't, you know, it's funny. I work with this guy named he's a very good, one of my best friends now, but he um, he and I met because we were both looking for people to write songs with, you know, collaborators. Him being a composer and a, you know, a singer songwriter, and me being a lyricist, you know, kind of like a Elton John, Bernie Taupin type arrangement. And that's how we first met, you know, online. We started writing songs together. We became friends that way, and over time. And then, in fact, he's soon to be releasing his first album. None of the songs on it are songs that we wrote together. That's that's a different story. Um, but we what's the reason I bring it up is it's, you know, obviously I always gave him like the option to choose, you know. I always gave him like a bunch of different songs to choose from, so he could choose what he wants, you know, what kind of stands out to him. So it isn't just like, here, do this one. It's like, well, I don't like that one, or that one doesn't fit me, you know. Give plenty of options, and then allow them to choose. And not, I don't know if it's a coincidence or if it's or what, but once he started performing some of our songs for people, people started saying that, oh, you know, your songs are too depressing. It's too sad. And then we both realized, and they were, and it got to a point where people were criticizing me as the lyricist, saying like, why does your lyricist only ever write sad songs? And it's like, I don't. That's just the ones he chooses. And
It's actually funny that you say that too, because I was just kind of seeing this one clip of something before we started our conversation about how it also depends on how something is presented. For example, I was watching this. It was a, forgive me for being going into Zoomer culture, but I was watching TikToks a little bit
there we go.
before, kind of to unwind a little bit. And there's one guy I follow. He kind of does a lot of like music stuff, and he was talking about the Stranger Things intro music, and it's like he basically repeated the exact same sound, but in a different tone and all these like different pitches, and it's the exact same keys. Or again, I'm very musically challenged. I don't know if I'm using the right terms, but basically the exact same thing, but just more like it was upbeat and actually hopeful. And it was interesting too, what the fact that you say that, because it's like, well, how is something being presented? Is it, you know what I mean, the same words that could be devastating could also be the opposite, could be inspiring. It just depends on a lot of the audible things as to how you're presenting it. It's
Well,
tone. Yeah.
a perfect example of that is one of my favorite bands is They Might Be Giants. And what's really funny about a lot of their music, not all of it, but a lot of their music is you look at some of their lyrics and it is very like morbid, very kind
Mhm.
of macabre, dark kind of. It's, talking about death and, just like existential crises and stuff, but they sing it in such a happy-go-lucky kind of way, very up-tempo.
Mhm.
And
Well,
that's what's funny
oh,
to
I'm sorry.
me
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
is presenting something like that, just making something where like it sounds like you just read the words and it sounds sad and depressing, but you hear the music makes you hear it in a different way. It's like you sing a song about death and hopelessness, but it's like, oh, it sounds so nice.
Well, I mean, it's funny too, because I mean, there's also like intention. For example, I was just having this conversation slash kind of friendly debate with my one buddy who's like all into music, and we were talking about the song and its cover, Circles. So I was arguing that the Monsters and Men version is better in my opinion because it's more true to the lyrics, because the lyrics, that's a depressing song. I mean, it really is about the complexity of relationships or lack thereof, and the weird intermingling between those two statuses. And it's a somber song. Like their music reflects that. And the Post Malone version, even though it's the original, is more upbeat and poppy, despite those little rougher lyrics that are not definitely not happy. And I was saying that's why I think the Mice of Monsters of Men does a better job. And my buddy was like, "Well, what if you consider the fact that Post Malone was kind of being ironic in a way, like almost sarcastic, like, oh yeah, we're having a great time. Oh, I am horribly depressed, and therefore there's another layer to it." So I asked, well, would that change your mind if you knew that wasn't the case and he just needed to make an up nice beat to make money? He's like, absolutely. We're never gonna know. We're never gonna be Post Malone and ask him. But there also goes the intention and also how you think of a piece. So I mean, it really is interesting how little things that you may have not even planned for can reflect and show how your works are done. I know we're talking about music, but we can talk about any of them. You know what I mean?
Right. Well,
It,
it's like you take a good example is of a show that I really like called Malcolm in the Middle, and
Classic show.
classic, absolutely classic. And there was a scene I remember reading something that the composer of the series, actually, I didn't mean to bring it up, but it happens to relate. They might be there's a connection to They Might Be Giants. They actually did the theme song and used to do the music, but this is a different composer after they left the show. But he talked about, there was, obviously it's a sitcom, so you want to make it funny and lighthearted. But there was a scene that was very dramatic in what was going on. And it was like a big argument between a father and son where the son gets kicked out. It's like, that doesn't sound so, happy go, like that doesn't necessarily carry the vibe of what you want from like a comedy. Um, so he just decided to make the score of the scene almost like circus music, where it's like sounds very happy, but it's just like the father and son hashing it out and just like at each other's throats, and it makes it funny. So even just little things like that, there's always just a slight element that you can add that changes the emotion. And it is kind of like an ironic thing. It is kind of like it's a contrast, it's a contradiction, and somehow that makes it, sometimes that makes it more effective in a way than if you just like you do something that is just going along with what it seems like. It's like, oh, this, the lyrics are kind of sad. Um, and but the thing is, for me, is like I'm always every song that I do, every poem that I write, or whatever. There's always a different goal in mind. Obviously, you want that for every piece of your writing. So sometimes you write something that's sad, and it's meant to be sad, or sometimes you write something that's like I wrote this one song. I think it's in the book. It's called "You Don't Know What I've Been Through," and obviously, you would think just reading that title that it's just about, just somebody being like, "You don't know what I've been through. How hard my life is," but it's not. Like there's more layers to that, you know. When you actually read the words, it's I don't remember everything that I wrote in it, and I don't want to give it all away, but um, it, basically, it's almost like you don't know what I've been through, and I don't know what you've been through, and isn't it like such a great mystery that nobody really knows, you know, how hard another person has it or the experience, and it's not really that emotional, you know, when really ultimately it's like it's almost like tongue in cheek, you know,
Huh.
and that I don't know, I like doing little things like that where it's like and I like to write from the point of view of characters sometimes. You know, that's like the Randy Newman in me. You know, just wanting to write so where it's like an unreliable narrator. And I don't know. I just that's the thing I love about you know you know I love music. I'm not like a musician like you know. I'm kind of like a like you are with it when it comes to like the music terminologies and stuff. I'm not that you know. I know some of it, but like there's a reason I stick to words. You know,
Yeah.
and uh, I lost my train of thought already. But I wow, I totally forgot what my point was gonna be. But there we go.
Hey, that's the beauty. It's like the cold reading of the story. It's like we're seeing we're
Oh, I remember what I was gonna say. Actually,
oh, but look at that. It's twist
it
ending.
came
M.
back.
Night Shyamalan.
Hallelujah! It came back. No, what I was gonna say is most of the songs that you hear, you know, love songs, you know, and I love a good love song, you know, especially if it's done in an original way.
Mhm.
But what I always love whenever songwriters do something that is different, you know, something that is unique, and maybe they'll do a love song, but it's a kind of a slant on the love song. But what I love, really, I think probably my favorite kind of song is a character song, you know, a song that's tells this a story and tells, you know, and has character development and has you know experiences that are told through the song and
Boy Named Sue style. Yeah.
absolutely yeah and there's a lot of that I think in my the songs that I write. There are definitely of course songs that are from my perspective and are I wrote it in a personal way as kind of letting stuff out as one does, you know, when they can't afford a therapist. And writing's probably more effective anyway. But a lot I always enjoy writing something that's like maybe from somebody from the point of view of somebody that's not me, and maybe they have a bit of a skewed perception. Maybe I'm writing from the point of view of like a child. You know, there's a couple of songs in the book that are from like the perspective of like a child and just kind of like a childlike, you know, there's childlike imagery and this childlike, you know, the way things are described in the song is the like how a child would. It's kind of like that, you know, the song you mentioned, which 12-year-old girl, which is actually one of my most proudest songs and one of the ones that I can't seem to get anybody to want to put music to. My friend, you know, he's always like, yeah, you know, it's good to read, but it's not very musical. It's like I think it could work as a musical song. Um, and I, you know, that type of song
Uh,
in particular, it's like, you know,
contact like Lord or Billie Eilish. I mean, she has Tourette's. She's neurodivergent like us too. Maybe she'll do it out of charity work. I mean, just something like just like faded vocals. And it's like, oh, thank you. Turn this into a generic pop song. But it's like,
yeah,
yes, Brandon, but you're a millionaire now, so who's really complaining?
keep the phone, yeah, exactly. It's
So
like,
deal with the
"Save
devil. It's like, well, should I really be upset?
this little
uh,
12-year-old girl, something
but
like
no,
that.
I mean, no, you make a very good point, and I think that's actually too. I think that's really important because I'm glad you said that. I've been saying this for a while now. I mean, so many people do not do not see anyone outside themselves. It's, you know, and we see this. I know it's a very minor thing to nitpick it, but I think it shows the underlying problem, especially just with general life, is that a lot of people think they're the only one that matters. Look at all this like oh, be the main character bullshit and all this other stuff. Like, I know it's little and I know it's trivial, but think about the larger implication. No one else is real. You literally are the center of the universe. I mean, it's like we're going back several thousand years again to Salafism, where it's like you're the only real one. And I don't want to be a boomer making a big deal over a little kid trend, but you almost kind of see it outside in the real world and also on the online world, where people seem to think like no one else really matters or exists, and everything relates back to them, and forget about everything else. So that is why I think it's so important that you have all these character songs or lyricisms, poems, whatever you choose to call them, whatever form they take in the future or presently. It's important, and it really is important. And I mean, I think
Sorry about that. Zoom kind of cut out on us. Something about the premium, kind of all that kind of nonsense. So it was unfortunate because you were making some really good points, but and it kind of cut off in the middle of what you were saying. But if you can remember sort of where you were, I'll just let you kind of carry on. My
Yeah,
way.
no, I really hope in between this you kind of have like one of those like, old timey technical difficulty screens, like a really like animated caricature of you with like a broken cable. Like we'll get that, yeah.
I don't know if I could be
um,
that sophisticated, but hey,
we'll, we'll figure it out.
flash something
All
on
right,
this.
but I was just saying that basically that a lot of people aren't living outside themselves, that they're the center of the universe, kind of the whole main character trend, which is trivial and kind of boomer-esque to complain about. But I'm saying it kind of relates to the whole problem that no one really sees anyone else as real or even or just simply important. And the fact that you're doing character writings and a lot of your lyricisms is important. It's important, and I mean, people, whether or not you or a listener thinks it's is important or just it's not that deep, bro, kind of thing. I think it is. I think it's important to write in a sense where it's not you and you almost can't relate, but you know enough to make an idea. And that's also why I do love a lot of your lyricisms, because I mean, you read, there's like it's almost 400 pages, and like I when I was, we're in the early stages of putting this book together. um yeah, I mean, you're reading through them and you're like, okay, there's no way this guy has all these different experiences. I mean, some flat out cannot happen. But then you kind of like,
I was never
kind
a
of,
12-year-old girl.
yes. There's a lot of ones too. It's like there's a lot of ones. Yeah, I'm honestly just drawing a blank right now. But like I said, there's almost 400 pages
Like over
of
180.
writings, and it's like there are all these different stories and lives. And whether or not you know someone that's based off a lot of these, like I mean, I don't really think you gave a eulogy for an Undertaker, unless you did. That's metal as hell. And but also, by the way, that's a very good one. To anyone listening, when you buy your copy, that's a little bit toward, I want to say, closer to the end, but not quite at the very end. Very good one. That one
And
was
what's
very
funny
good.
about you actually I asked you for a couple that you enjoyed that you personally liked that you would like me to read. I can actually go ahead and read that one right now, and
Oh, please
it's
do. So everyone knows what I'm talking about. Yeah.
yeah. What's funny about that one? It's honestly not one of my favorites. I mean, I think it's okay, but that's the great thing about taste and what people like is everybody's got there's things that people like that some of my writing that people really like that I'm not that big on. It's the same thing with my friend Matt. It's like there are some songs that he's like he really likes, and some that I'm like, I didn't think I did that great on that one. But a little bit to be blunt. This is one of the this I actually wrote this one in high school, my senior year,
Really? How
and
long ago was that, by the way? I have no idea how old you are.
actually high school I graduate. Funny enough, I was just thinking about this um just 3 days ago. It was June the 2nd, and June the 2nd, 2022, which was exactly 10 years since I graduated high school. I graduated high school
Oh,
10
so
years.
just about the same. Just about the same.
Yeah, 28. Uh, it doesn't feel like that long has passed, but but I was a senior in high school when I wrote this one, and of course I, since rewrote it and revised it, so this version was not the first draft, but um, it, there are certain. It's funny because songs come and I mean writing in general. I shouldn't just exclude it to songs, but anything that you write often comes from like different source of inspiration,
Hmm.
and for me it's like sometimes sometimes it's something personal, sometimes it's something that maybe it's someone else's experience, but sometimes it's just the title comes to mind. I have an idea for a title, and so I base the story and what happens in the song or whatever in on that title. So I came up with the title Eulogy for the Undertaker, and I just thought, what could that be about? So as I started writing it, it just kind of, and I just that the opening line, which I'll read in a second, was the first two lines, was just the first thing I came up with. That was the idea. I was like, okay, that's gonna be the title, Eulogy for the Undertaker, and there's gonna be the opening line and really the chorus. But of course, in this form in the book, it's not. There's no chorus. Um, but it just ended up becoming this story that I'm gonna read right now, which is Eulogy for the Undertaker. So this is how it goes. I'm so eloquent. I wrote a eulogy for the undertaker. He died outside the church for the Quakers. As he knelt before to put his soul in rhyming, the Lord struck through the trees with a bolt of lightning. The good book opened to Exodus. Always to him made more sense than Genesis. An altar boy who liked the chorus girls, but he took his oath and kept his soul in church. He stepped outside, walked home in the rain. The Reverend asked him if he needed a ride. He just said, I have faith. He needed to uncloud his upholstered mind. Rain to him was God's way of coming into time, and the young man, after his rosaries, took his soul in stride and blessed the trees, an unfiltered chill, an unsettling breeze, but he kept on, for the Lord would protect him from anything. An electric strike from the Emperor's seraphs jolted his veins, gave him an epitaph. He looked into the sky, mumbled unintelligibly. No one knew what he said, but he died in agony. But hear me bereaved, do not despair. The Lord has been unkind, but he gave repair. Like Job, he took his disciple, kept his life not long. But best to still praise, for who wants to be wrong? There we go.
I like like it's just like it's something that you actually have to read several times because it's kind of like we talked about in the beginning, like when you hear something with a different medium. And of course, I mean, like I read with a little voice in my head, hearing you read it, it's like it hits differently. And it's like I'm still trying to interpret a lot of the words. And I find it like, for example, like even like very in the beginning when it was like the page turned, the good book turned to Exodus, which he thought always made more sense than Genesis. So I'm like, I feel like there's a lot there in those like two little lines that I mean you could probably explore for hours. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like I'm just really like just those again, like that little thing, and then in regards to the whole the lyricism, the poem, the writing. I mean, it's like there's so many little things in that's why I love it. That's why I chose that one for you to read because that's for me. It's like you got to keep looking through. I mean, I'm putting in my order for my own copy soon enough, and I'm going to be pondering over a lot of these because it's like, okay, well, you read them again, or you hear it again, or you read it, and like 3 weeks later, 3 months, years, whatever, something sparks it. You're like, wait, what the hell was that? And you read it again, and it's completely different, and it's you know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm just really excited about words and writing, but I mean, like
Oh yeah.
that's what I'm saying. There's so many. There's so many layers there. You know what I mean? That's why I love it.
Well, I was always a big fan. So one of the things, one of my biggest influences, writing lyrics and just writing in general, I guess mainly with when it comes to songs and poetry and stuff, is I'm very influenced by Japanese music and Japanese lyrics. Obviously, I've just read translations, but it's not so much like the wording of things because obviously it's in a different language. But even when you read it translated into English, there's it's kind of vague. You get the general idea of what's happening. It tells a story. A lot of Japanese songs, particularly this artist that I is one of my favorite artists of all time, is this Japanese singer-songwriter by the name of Yosoi Inoue. And a lot of his lyrics are they're hard to really understand exactly what it's saying, but you can understand kind of the general idea of what the song is. It's just specific lines. You're like, well, what could this mean? Well, it could mean a number of different things. It could mean nothing, or it could have, a lot of deep meaning to it, a lot of depth. Um,
Yeah.
and that's what I strive to do in a lot of my songs is write something that's not so cryptic that you can't gather what's going, like for instance, I'm a big
Mhm.
fan of the Shins, and I love their lyrics, but like a lot of their songs you can't understand what the hell's going on. You can't understand what the hell the song's about.
Oh, there's
um
a fine line. There's a fine line between not being ham-fisted obvious and not being like unintelligible and filters everybody who like didn't read a magazine one issue in 1970 misprint.
right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of creatives who it's like, okay, what the hell are you talking about? And it's not even pretentious. It's almost like, all right, buddy, you don't even know what the hell you're doing. So, I mean, like you said, there's always a fine line, and that's why, like, I'm glad you kind of explained that a little bit more elegantly than I did. Um, like
Which
you
is
don't want to be obvious, and you
I'm
don't want to
surprised.
be completely unknowable because there's a fine line you got to ride between that.
Well, you always want to I always want to write something where it's like you said, not ham-fisted obvious. Some I don't want it to be too, like, I want there to be like, okay, what is kind of going on in this to an extent, but like I don't want it to be confusing, but I also want it to be like people can come up with their own interpretations and they're never wrong, because sometimes you come up with something and it comes from the subconscious. So it's like
Mhm.
you don't know exactly why you chose those string of words, or why you chose to write it a certain way, or to have this happen in your work, in the writing. It just came from somewhere deep inside, and it's interesting what kind of comes about it. Like there's a song I put specifically in this book for this reason is I it tells a very specific kind of story, but in once you know what the story is, it makes sense. It's called "We Are Dead." Talk about morbid, macabre kind of songs, and it's called "We Are Dead." And I want I it's the kind of song that I would send to like my friends and stuff, like just the words, and I would ask them what do you think is going on in this song? What do you think is this, the central storyline of this? And it always is something totally different than what it actually is. And that's funny to me. It's entertaining just to hear people's different interpretations. So yeah, I like to hear people's thoughts of like, oh, this is what it means to me. And it's like, oh, I didn't, even though I'm the one who wrote it, like I didn't think about it like that. But that's an excellent way of looking at it. And I always like songs like that too, other
That
people.
is really interesting. I mean, it's true too. I mean, if you ever like look back at some little like old things you read and you're like, "Oh, this is a lot deeper than I thought." But like, "Oh, wait, I'm the one who wrote this damn thing like 10 years ago." You know what I mean?
It,
It kind of even goes back to what we were circle back, let's be more corporate. Circle back to the whole Post Malone conversation. It's like, did he intend for the beat to be like this sarcastic irony with the lyrics? Did that was like, no, I just wanted to make money, something catchy? Or it's like, was that like a subconscious thing? Did he even make the damn song in the first place? I mean, there's a lot of things about the creative world that are, I mean, open for interpretation and also mysterious all beyond belief. I
well,
mean,
take like what is considered like the greatest like music, songwriters of all time, Lennon and McCartney, and
Mhm.
people have dissected their songs, to all the limits that you can. You know,
Oh,
they
The
every
Sergeant Pepper album. I mean, that's like
yeah.
you need like you can have like three PhD like you know PhD holders like all have different interpretations of what's going on, and
Yeah, like
that's the fun in it. That's the fun.
yeah, and what's funny is that like when you really like you get to interviews where they what did you what was what did you mean by this? Like, oh, it's just something I heard on the radio. It's just something I read in a newspaper. I read the news that day. Oh boy, um, and and it's like there's really not as deep a meaning to it, but that doesn't really take away from the enjoyment of it because
No,
you
yeah.
know, that's part of the fun of the reading process or just hearing, absorbing words that no matter however you absorb it, whether it's, actors, reciting it on television or in a movie or something, or something you read in a book or some, lyrics you hear in a song. Um, However it speaks to you, it's, that's how it speaks to you. It's a
I
person.
mean, no, 100%. And I always say that the creator doesn't always have all the answers or versions to his or herself. I mean, for example, Brian Adams insists that there's nothing deeper in the summer of '69. That's just the year he's basing it off of. I'm trying to think. Was it America that wrote "Horse with No Name"?
Yes.
I've read several things. There's like, no, that's just like a little like folklore song. It has nothing to do with heroin. And then it's like, well, if you look at the lyrics of
I
both,
never
you're
heard
like,
that myth.
oh, you haven't? Oh, okay, really? Well, not. I guess it comes from that horse is another name for heroin, and then I guess
Oh.
yeah, a lot of people say that like the music aspect is like, oh, it's a very like serene, like you don't care. And I mean, if
Why
you
do
know what I
I
mean, it's
feel
like very like
why
yeah.
do I feel like BoJack Horseman probably made a reference to that horse being like heroin?
I I would actually be insulted if he didn't. If that show did not make any reference to a horse with no name.
This is totally unrelated, but I just have to say it. I've always thought I'm the only one who ever shares this opinion. I always thought that the singer, forgive me, I don't know his name, but I always felt like the singer in that song sounds like B. Arthur.
Okay. So
Part
all
of the
right.
journey.
See now, know what you did, Brendan. Now, because like when I leave early, later today to go to my friend's mom's birthday party, I'm gonna have to list that on my Spotify queue, and then I know for a fact it's gonna hit me, and I'm gonna be both pissed off but also laughing hysterically. And I don't know. I'm already predicting it. I don't really know how I'm gonna handle it on
I
the car
wanna
ride there.
you gotta let me know because can you hear it? I gotta see if you hear it too. But no, I mean it's a great. I mean, that's one of those songs too. I love that it's just like it's so different. It's it tells a story, but there's also like, what does it mean by the ocean is a desert with the sky with the perfect disguise above. That probably maybe they didn't intend it to mean anything deep, but it definitely
Yeah.
sounds like it's very poetic. And that's the thing about poetry is that sometimes, it actually does mean something and it is like a metaphor for something. Like I was talking about the Shins music and James Mercer's songwriting. It's not that his songs don't mean anything. It's just that they're worded and again, not dissing him at all because I think he's a fantastic songwriter and I think his lyrics are, some of the best of contemporary lyrics, but like it's a niche kind of thing because it's like, well, I don't listen to the Shins to relate to the song or to
Yeah.
connect with it. It's just like sounds good. The words sound good to the music, and it's all it's like that.
Well,
Uh,
it's like of Montreal. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
not too much.
Oh yeah, no, they're very like it's very like very bizarre music, but it's good. And then you listen to the lyrics, and it's like I mean, the ones that comes to mind is the band is of Montreal. The song "I'd Engager," and it's like I'm trying to remember the lyrics. It was like she's like he's just a simple little flirt. His sister is only going to hurt you. Ladies, I'm begging you. I think it's like escape from this phallocentric tyranny, and it's like, like there's so many like it basically just relates to, for my opinion, the whole song is like because the chorus is can't help it if it's true, don't want to be a man, just want to play with you. In my opinion, the whole song is basically like the guy is like, nah, I don't really want to do anything committed to anyone. And so, but it's like even the lyrics involved in it, like, dude, like what the hell are you talking about? But that's also the beauty in it. And also, I highly recommend for you and anyone listening, check out Montreal. It's a trip, but I mean, it's not like a bad trip. You'd enjoy it.
Yeah, I always like a good trip. I'll have to check him out. I'm gonna be hanging out with a friend tonight. We could probably listen to some of that together, so that'd be nice. I'll keep that in mind. No, I mean that's what and I always love like a lot of alternative music nowadays has kind of very unique kind of songwriting. You know, when you listen to a lot of pop music, it's all very
Mhm.
simple, and it's some of it, it's fine. You know, a lot of the hits, the mainstream kind of stuff. But I love complex songwriting, but not overly like nonsensical lyrics. You know, like not all the
Mhm.
time. Sometimes it's good, but like I don't know. I always like something that even it doesn't have to be a personal or like it doesn't have to be sad or it could be a simple concept but like it's just the way it's done and that's just what I strive to do with my songs is be I don't necessarily feel like I always have to be 100% different or 100%
Mhm.
outside the box. I'll write a love song but I'll do it in a different way,
Mhm.
and it's whenever you're a writer, I'll go ahead and go into the reason why my friend's his album that's coming out doesn't have any of my songs on it is because it's his father is paying for it. He's paying for the he's basically financing the album. And his condition though is um he has pretty much full control over the songs himself, even though it's my friend. And initially my friend wanted all the songs to be our songs, but his dad wanted to change my lyrics without even
Mhm.
consulting me. He just wanted to change,
Mhm.
and I refused. So that became like one of the stipulations is that, well, you can't use any of his lyrics if, if
Yeah, no, that's kind of like a whole like damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing. It's like,
exactly.
well, then it's not mine anymore. And then it's like also to the point where you can't even release the original without all these different like caveats. So that's a difficult choice. I agree with your decision though. I mean, but I also wouldn't shame anyone in a similar circumstance for not. I mean, that's a tough one to that's a tough one to make.
It's I mean, I've nothing against my friend, I don't
Oh,
blame him one bit, of
he's
course
got
he
his reasons. Yeah.
and I haven't heard any of these songs. He wrote all the lyrics himself. He seems to be proud of it. I'm interested in hearing what comes about from it. He's not a bad lyricist. He's just better as a songwriter.
So you're not going to hear like 11-year-old boy, like just on the flip of like
That would like,
baptism of a birth or something.
yeah,
Uh,
baptism of
baptism for the
like
Undertaker, the overgiver. Like,
yeah, sorrowful and regressing maybe. The s- the past
found
is
in
not written in
ambrosia.
the
I couldn't think
stone.
of an opposite for ambrosia.
And
Or no,
aloof. Now that is one of my like
found in ambrosia. I don't.
yeah,
Not aloof. It's
that
I don't
aloof
know. What is
ambrosia.
what would
When
the
people
opposite of ambrosia be? What's it?
I have no idea. I don't even really know what ambrosia is. I just thought it was an interesting word. I think it's a food or a dessert of some kind, maybe. I don't know what.
I don't know. I thought it was an emotion. Like I thought it was like, oh, I'm confused in this other thought.
It, the reason I wrote it, that's another song I wrote in my senior year in high school, around the same time I wrote Eulogy for the Undertaker. And there are some songs where it's like when I think of them, I kind of think of them almost like packaged, even though they're not, just because they were written around the same time. I just kind of associate them together, but they're very different kind of songs. And Aloof and Ambrosia, I don't know. Ambrosia always just sounded like something very dreamlike to me. So, and that is one of my nonsensical songs where it's like it doesn't really mean anything. Like it's very nonsensical once you get to that one. People reading
It's like I'm the Eggman. It's like, we're just having fun. We're just some
it.
guys. We're just like, yeah. It's like I am the walrus. I'm just here for a good time. I'm just
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
I'm
just
just
here so I don't
here.
get fined.
I'm just here to be all weird, man. Let's just be. I always like doing
Maybe
that.
that is the meaning of being the Eggman and the walrus. It's like, fuck it, we ball. You know what I mean? It's just, don't think too hard. Be the Eggman, be the walrus.
Go with, yeah, man. Yeah. No, it's funny to me when you think about their early. Speaking of the Beatles, when you think of their early stuff, they went from, she loves you, yeah, yeah, to I am the Eggman. I
Well,
am the
it
wolf.
is, and it's hilarious too, because when you look back at a lot of like, I can't even say older songs. I'm sure there's some very new songs that follow the pattern that I'm not aware of. But for example, everybody knows "Sweet Child of Mine" by Guns N' Roses.
Hmm.
The majority of the song was just a poem that Axl Rose wrote to his like girlfriend, like
That's
pretty
right.
long before. Oh, was it his wife?
I don't know. I
Oh, okay.
vaguely know the backstory. I know it was a
Okay.
poem that he wrote. That's all I know.
Yeah.
Is that it's just
Did you
something he
know that
wrote.
till the end when he goes like, "Where do we
Where
go
do we
now?"
go now?
That's literally just like I don't know what else to sing. Where do we go now?
Yeah, where does this song go now? Yeah, I actually did know that, and it was always funny.
Yeah, I mean it's hilarious though because you think about it and it's like it's kind of like goes back to the whole conversation. Like you're like, oh, but like, does that mean like where's relationship going? Like, what are we? And the guy's like, I just didn't know what else to say.
Yeah,
Like,
where is like how do we end this song? Where do we go? Where do we go now?
oh, just repeat that. But we,
And then have Axl Rose just screaming at till the end, till the fade out, and then and
Maybe
then we go.
Paradise City is just about him wanting to go, like, move out to a different neighborhood. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of want to get out of here. Yeah, I got some bad feelings about how Detroit's gonna turn in a few decades. I think we should probably get out. We should skedaddle.
You can think of a million examples of those types of things. I can't think of any more off the top of my
Yeah,
head
exactly.
of just things that are just like they don't they just it's just something like, oh, I just read it somewhere, or it was just it's whatever.
Oh,
It's just something that
well,
came out.
smells like Teen Spirit. I mean, literally, Kurt Cobain even says like, I don't know, I just some of those just they just the words sounded good, and even the title. Before they were big, allegedly, they just, were just doing like, little basement DIY shows. And they didn't have a title for that song. It was just like, yeah, it basically was like the music was made first, and they just like, we'll throw in some lyrics to make whatever. And I guess after like a drug fueled bender after the show, of course, probably before and during as well, somebody wrote on the wall that Kurt Cobain smells like Teen Spirit, which was a brand of deodorant back in when they were forming, like late 80s, early 90s.
Wow.
And then like that's like everybody knows that one song by them the most. Like even if you don't really explore Nirvana,
Oh,
smells like Teen
everybody.
Spirit.
Everybody knows that song.
Yeah,
I,
I know.
I, that was one of those songs where I knew the Weird Al parody before I knew the original. A lot.
Honestly, that was me in Amish Paradise, like Gangster's Paradise.
Well, when I think about it, a lot. That's the case for a lot of stuff. Because
Oh yeah.
I started listening to Weird Al when I was a kid, and so before I got familiar with a lot of stuff, so I heard like a surgeon before like a virgin, and fat
That's the
before
beauty of Weird
bad.
Al.
That's the
That's
influence
why
of
that's
Weird
why
Al.
Harry Potter is gonna be Weird Al in that new movie coming out.
Oh yeah.
Which I mean, like I'm all for that. I'm like, just throw it out there. I'm gonna go see it.
I'm like, oh, okay,
Daniel
I
Radcliffe's a good actor. He's just kind of got tired of the whole thing. But I
interesting.
don't know. Let's see how he plays Weird Al. Let's see how this happens.
Yeah. um, it's just funny because he's hard to imagine, but hey, we'll see what he can do.
But also, like, don't you think it's kind of weird? Like, I just want to like bring this up that like, let's say we've had a movie like basically a biopic. We've had Queen, Elton John, now Weird Al. We're getting a Sex Pistols one coming out soon.
There's a David
Like,
Bowie one coming out too.
oh, I'm sure. Well, who's playing David Bowie?
I don't know.
Oh god, that's gonna be who
I
knows?
always thought I always thought a good choice. I don't think he is playing it, but I always thought Timothy Oliphant. I thought he always looked like David Bowie.
Yeah, probably. I mean, he's gonna be Willy Wonka apparently.
I wish.
But
What? They're doing another
like,
remake of that?
what's up?
They're doing another remake of Willy Wonka?
Oh no, I was thinking of Chalamet or whatever the hell his name was. But yeah, no, like he's like it's like the backstory of Willy Wonka, which like this is necessary. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, Hollywood. When are you ever gonna get back on track?
Who knows? Who knows? And I'm very concerned for anyone who's still on Tumblr when Timothy Chalamet plays Willy Wonka. It's going to be like the Onceler all over again.